nice journey. Learning to be a CEO, when you haven't been before is something else. You're not doing everything. When you got to start letting other people do things. That's an enjoyable part of it as well. But it's a challenge to learn to be a different type of leader depending on as the company grows, right? You have to grow with the company, or the company outgrows you and you've got to go do something else.
Hello and welcome to the Break Free podcast. I'm your host, David Mansala. Everybody knows that this podcast has been around for almost 4 years now, and our only purpose is to shine the light in these dark times through people that are making this world a better place, through their businesses, through their leadership styles. And today we have with us a fantastic person. Brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
You know that a lot of podcasts, they start with a long list and they almost read the resume of the guest. And I don't like doing that. I like it more from the heart. So please tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Oh, that's great. First name Burke, last name Autrey. So Burke Autrey. I live in Dallas, Texas. And I run a company called Fortium Partners. Beyond that, I have 4 grown kids and 6 grandchildren with 1 on the way, which makes for a very rich life. They all live very close to me. So we have lots of family around the house, lots of kids around, and just kind of the joy of my life that my job is at home and I work from home, and my job allows me to be around my family. But Fortium is a company that I started a while back that does technology leadership. So we provide technology leadership to companies of all sizes. And that is in the form of a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, a Chief Technology Officer, or what's called a Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO. And we do that on an interim, virtual, fractional basis for companies, and a little bit of a different take on the placement of executives in companies, because we fill a bit of a niche there that's different than your typical search type approach.
That is fantastic. I heard before from fractional CFOs or fractional CEOs, never from the technology side. I thought it didn't exist until I met you.
That's unfortunate. We hope that everybody knows that, but you're right. The CFO position is probably the most commonly known fractional or interim role. I know that because I used to be with a firm called Tatum, which was the gold standard for fractional CFO business. They eventually sold. While I was there, I helped a bunch of other people start the CIO practice there. So we were the first sort of large version of the technology leadership version of that model. But the Tatum model is fantastic, and that's how I learned the business, as being part of Tatum. But everybody knew that we were overwhelmingly a CFO business, and we had the same situation there. As very few people knew that there was a CIO business, that there was a technology component to it. But we grew it quite large, and it eventually went with the sale. It was back in sort of the early 2010s, 2012, 2011, 12, something like that.
That's fantastic. Burke, that most businesses don't get sold. We hear about all these companies doing, mergers and acquisitions and buying and selling businesses, and we think it's very common, but statistics shows otherwise, right? Very few businesses get to be sold.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. And it's, as a CEO, as an owner, you get that question a lot: is what's your exit? What is your plan? And I suppose everybody wants an exit. You like to think that that's the case, but as you said, there's not always an exit, or at least there's not an obvious exit for some companies. It has to be the kind of company that someone else wants to run. It has to have, has to meet their requirements, right? I think so. This kind of business has sold already. There are other businesses like this that are selling, but it's a different it's a different financial sort of arrangement that we do. Our business is really designed to allow our partners, who are the individuals that are doing the work, to monetize their career being technology leaders in all kinds of companies. They have wonderful careers. They're rock stars in their own right in terms of what they do. But the business is here for them to take that experience and monetize it at a point in their career where they want to do life differently. They want to have more freedom in their life to enjoy life. They want to travel. They want to do some things differently. So they're not looking for a full-time employment role usually when they come to us.
That is so interesting. And launching a career like that must have been very hard for you. Number one, resourcing the technology leaders must have been very hard. And then finding the companies that are willing to take them in a fractional way.
Yes.
It makes sense, right? Like, how many mid-sized or small businesses cannot afford a professional CIO or CTO? And how many of them are lacking because they cannot afford a person like that? And then you're filling the gap, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting. As you might expect, we spent a lot of time thinking about this. So, I do have some answers for you. On the one, as far as the people, we have been so blessed. We don't recruit. We don't do anything to try to recruit individuals. They come to us because Google, they search for us. We get referrals all the time. If somebody says, "Hey, I want to do some interim CIO work, who should I talk to?" We're really fortunate to have a large enough brand where people will say, call Fortium or reach out to Fortium, go to Fortium's website. And then we probably at any one time have as many as 100 to 120 people that we're talking to, explaining about the model, them trying to decide if now's the right time for them, because it's a different model. It's fairly entrepreneurial. And not for everyone. You have to be at a certain point in your career where you can afford to take some risks and have some variability in your income, right? It's usually people who've reached a point where they've got some financial stability, but they're still wanting to spend some time doing what they do. It's too early to retire, that sort of thing. But so that's a major part of it. I'm really proud that we've got a model for people at a stage in their career where otherwise they might not get to continue working, and that they can still do some of the best work of their entire careers because they're not in the pressure of a typical role with young families and all of the things that comes with it. They're often much more relaxed and able to give all of themselves to our clients, and it really is it's a remarkable way to do it. It provides our partners a bit of a safety net to try things they wouldn't otherwise try. So a lot of times it is a company that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford or attract that particular individual, that skill set, that experience, that geographic location, or just the experience that they have. And it's amazing to see our partners go in to do these roles with companies that they're just very appreciative of the experience and very needful of what they bring to the table.
That's beautiful. Now tell me about the whole situation of working from home. Has that been for your entire career? How did that evolve? Because I know that your agency is fairly large. You have a lot of people allocated to different locations, right?
Yeah, we do. So yeah, we started. I started in consulting and did some industry work as well. And so I have not always spent my career working from home, but when we started Fortium 10 years ago, we started. It was completely without assets, completely without location. We own no assets. We own no buildings. We own no offices. We own no office equipment. It's a completely virtual company. We use office suites like Regis or something like that to meet when we need to meet, but we rarely need to meet. We meet quarterly with the leadership team and so forth, and we use a hotel or we'll use an office suite, something. But all of our partners, there's about 160 to 170 now, they office out of their homes. They if they want to, they can get an office suite somewhere if they would rather do that. So they either work from home or they work from the client location, just depending on the client. Most clients since COVID are pretty comfortable with the remote situation, and if they're not, they let us know up front, and our partner can decide whether they, how much time they want to spend traveling and how much time they don't, right? So it's a different world for sure since COVID in terms of the remote, but in terms of me and the company itself, we didn't skip a beat in COVID just because we were remote already. There was nothing to shut down. There was nothing to adjust to. It was simply sort of business as usual. The technology got better. I will say that people got more used to using the technology, Zoom and whatever. Conference calls went away. Zoom came in and sort of took the world by storm, as well as Teams and others, right? But it's I like working from home. It allows me to short commute and have a sort of a continuous day, and be able to work in a lot of different time zones with a lot of different people and not have to shift around a lot.
Burke, one of the motivations that I had to open my own business it was that commute. I had like an hour and a half, 2 hours per way to go to the office.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to grow my career, I needed to stay like that. I'm talking 2000 to 2005.
Right.
Actually, it was more than that. It was about 10 years that I had to do that commute. And then I said, I am a technologist. This is 2004, right? I'm a technologist. I know I can work remotely. The internet wasn't that good back then, but we were writing code and submitting text to the internet, not video nor images, right? So when I opened ISU, I said, I'm going to make it 100% virtual, except for myself, because I knew I needed to have a place that I could drive to. But instead of commuting 2 hours, I was commuting 15 minutes to an office place that I rented, that I got.
Yeah, that's good.
And that grew fantastic. I mean, at the beginning, it was so hard for my clients to even trust that I would do the work remotely, right? And then I started hiring people in Argentina and in the United States and all over the place. And it was hard at the beginning, but after 3 years, in 2008, 2009, people were a bit more used to it, but that wasn't the norm. When COVID hit, like you were ready. The only thing that I had to rush is everything was on the cloud already. The only thing that I had to rush was to move accounting. Accounting was still at the local office, so I moved all the financials on the cloud. We did that in 3 days. It wasn't a big deal. And then everybody started working from home. So last year, I learned that I was cured from my corporate habit of having a corporate office. So I gave up the head office last year in July, and now even myself work from home.
It's enabled completely different work styles and corporate structures, right? It just is. You can always get together if you need to. There's a lot of debate about whether we're going back to the office and whether you need it. I just personally feel like the companies that can adjust like this are going to be very successful. And if you can't, you can't. But I think you're at a slight disadvantage to companies that can, because if you can be just as successful and be remote, and then have times where you bring people together as necessary, I think workers, they love to be near their families. They don't want the commute either, but they have to be jobs where you can ensure that the work gets done and the clients are served, and all of that needs to happen as well, right?
I have a good friend of mine who is high up in technology, working for a government agency in downtown Toronto, and everybody was working from home during those 2 years of COVID, and now they have the mandate to go back to the office. But he said that everybody got so used to doing online meetings that he basically drives to the office to open his laptop and have team meetings inside the office.
Yes. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. which just shows you can do it from anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we have people that travel. They have other homes. They work from different places, and it really our model in particular creates a lot of flexibility for people. Our partners, our managing partners who recruit and sell the work that our partners do, they can often they can take a vacation, work from Europe, work from anywhere in the US. As long as they can meet the time zone requirements, they're there, which I think is just a great advancement in terms of building work into your life.
That's for sure. Burke, what was your motivation to start your own agency, your own company? Because it's not easy. I know you came from this other business that got sold.
Right.
Why not just get another job?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started my career in consulting. Consulting was, speaking of travel and being on the road and so forth, consulting is a career that's all about travel. And we had a young family at the time, and we just didn't sign up for that. I didn't get married so my wife could be a single mom, at home with me on the road. So we made changes in work I made changes in work to keep me closer to home so that I could balance that life and be with my kids and be part of my family, which was important to us. But I will say that the combination of that consulting experience as well as what you might call industry experience, working for a company as opposed to a consulting firm, it just occurred to me that consultants work differently. They attack a problem in their work like a consultant would. They analyze it. They evaluate the current state and the to be state, and they think of things in terms of initiatives that get done. And after doing that for a while, getting that experience, it just occurred to me that doing the role of a leader, whether it's a director of finance or a director of IT or director of marketing or something like that, combining the consulting nature of it with the role base of it, with the role, was just an idea that I gained some passion for. And so I went on my own and created a small company. There were a couple of us, but we were doing interim CIO and CTO work, fractional and interim CIO, CTO work. And I was looking for a way to grow that because I had an entrepreneurial bent. I thought that there could be something to that. I knew there were CFO businesses that were growing at the time, but I didn't quite know how to grow that business because the margins in the business are not great compared to other businesses. So it's a services business, and the vast majority of the work goes to the people doing the work. And so I ran into the Tatum organization that was doing it. We were networking at the time, so I would network with CFOs, they would network with me, and we would share leads. One day there was a call that said, "Hey, Tatum is going to start a CIO practice. Would you be interested in participating in that?" And I thought, that's the answer. That is the answer for the growth. Is how do you grow something where you connect with someone who's done it before and they have a plan for that. And the model was useful for any executive role. It just so happened that they did CFOs and now CIOs for the technology leadership. So that was, and the reality is it was too young in my career. I didn't have the experience really to go out and do that. At least that's the way it kind of worked out. So I did that for, from 2001 to 12, 13. In there were a couple of jobs when the time was right. But I realized after the sale of Tatum that there still was not a technology leadership version of what we did in the market. And so the former CEO of that CIO practice and I in 2014 decided to start a technology leadership only version of that model. Same model, very thankful to the Tatum organization for sort of teaching us the way that the model works. And I think that's part of our strategic advantage now, is just having years of experience in this model and how to run this model and how to stay focused on what we do. But there were times where it would have made sense to go get a job, but I had a real passion for creating this service, both for our partners who need a model like this to be able to extend their careers. Once they've reached 25 plus years of experience, they want to extend their careers, but they're either not interested or others are not interested in them for full-time roles. But also the market needs it. I have a passion for that CEO who is trying to get where they need to go, but they just don't have the technology leadership to get them there. They don't have someone to help them chart that path and do what needs to be done, because oftentimes in a medium-sized company, what you can afford or attract are those that have less experience. And so we bring in people who are much, much more experienced than typically would be at that size of company. And I just knew that company needed to exist, right? So we started it 10 years ago in 2014, almost 10 years now. And to me, it's been a lot more fulfilling than going to get a job. Who knows? I probably could have made more money getting a job and staying with something for a long time, but there's just an entrepreneurial spirit in me that drove me to create the job, to create the company, and stick with it for all this time.
Burke, you know that I'm a man of faith, right? That's why I wear this big cross on my chest. And the Bible says that the Lord has a book where every day of your life is written in it.
That's right.
And I tell you this because I was similar to you. I had to dabble into corporate for 10 years until I really had the courage and the knowledge to open my first business. And but I always had this uneasiness in me to be my own boss. I mean, I went to college in Canada, and as soon as I graduated, I was going to open a software consulting firm without knowing that I was a 25-year-old kid and everybody was looking at me as a junior developer.
Right.
They will never trust me with a software project.
That's right.
So I felt miserably for 2 years. I ended up building clones, because back in the 90s, that's what you did. And we started selling clones. And the first year I made money. The second year I lost the money that I made with the warranties that I needed to honor. But I was able to sell the company for the debt that I had, because of the brand value, because I had over 1,000 clients. So I didn't go bankrupt. I actually got set free, and that's when my wife told me, "You gotta go get a real job." So I got a real job as a developer, and my career started to grow there until I went on the higher levels in leadership and technology for multinationals. But my desire for entrepreneurship was still there. And once I jumped ship and I started my first business, I never looked back. But it was hard because I had the bad experience in the 90s where I couldn't provide for my family. My wife had to take 2 jobs to pay the rent and feed the kids. I had 3 kids already. And now I'm here asking her again to do the same thing 10 years later, right?
Absolutely.
And she actually said yes, and that was the blessing. She actually supported the family. And in the second time around, I was so scared that I never spent a penny out of that business. I didn't collect a salary for 2 years. It was all my wife's. But then my wife went to university. She graduated as a computer scientist. She got a high-paying job as a database analyst.
Sure.
So, I mean, we were doing basic expenses with her. Like, we didn't have any luxuries. Like, we didn't have vacations for those 2 years.
Right.
But that allowed to build a good cushion of cash flow in the business.
I agree.
And the deal was with her. If you don't hire me within 5 years, you gotta go get another job because I'm not supporting you again, right?
Yeah.
But she gave me 5 years, right? And sure enough, year 5th, I hired her. So company was big enough for me to hire her back,
Yes. Well, I'm a man of faith as well, and my wife has a faith as well. We're both Christians, and it's been a part of it. And I'm very fortunate that my wife had that faith and always knew that God was going to provide for her, and that he would lead me down the path that was right. And if I was listening to him, that I'd be going down the path, or I would adjust the path depending on God's answer in those cases, right? But there were some real, doing that entrepreneurial path means there are going to be some setbacks, right? There's going to be lean times. And there were, for us, there were times that were really lean, and I was very scared at times that had I made the right choice, was I hurting my family by going down an entrepreneurial path, right? But my wife knew what she could see in me, what I really enjoyed, and it was when I was building a business and when I was serving clients, or when I got a new client, she knew, she could see that was what was driving me in terms of enjoying my work, right? And so being able to do what you love and enjoy the work that you do is it's a big part of it. It's not required. Not everybody does, and they still have to make a living for their family. But it sure is great if you can make a living and enjoy what you do. And I always have, especially when I've been working in this model and growing the business. So, but you're right. Same with us. There's been a couple of times where when I started the second business, there were some lean times at the beginning. You have to be careful not to grow your own expenses too fast. And I was working to pay myself and to pay the business in the early days, right? But fortunately, we've had good growth over the years, and it's definitely different. I spend most of my time now running the business, not serving clients. We spend a lot of time on marketing and writing and internal, stuff, operations and legal and financial things. But it's been a real nice journey. Learning to be a CEO, when you haven't been before, is something else. When you're not doing everything, when you got to start letting other people do things, that's an enjoyable part of it as well. But it's a challenge to learn to be a different type of leader, depending on as the company grows, right? You have to grow with the company, or the company outgrows you, and you've got to go do something else, right?
And Burke, you touched a great point. There is a big difference between self-employment and an entrepreneur.
Right.
A real entrepreneur is the one that is able to delegate. Self-employed, when I started the business, my first contract was like a self-employed person. So I incorporated, but then I got a job where they actually hired me to fulfill that job, right? It was a 2-month gig, trying to figure out the software for this MFPs, just large photocopiers, where they are actually computers that happen to print paper on paper. But that quickly became, for me, thank God, it quickly became a bigger job, because they trusted me with this machine, and I was able to figure it out. And then that required 2 more engineers, and so I hired my first 2 employees, and so I quickly became an entrepreneur. But I didn't know how to delegate yet. Even though I was a leader in technology in many companies, when it became my own money and my own time, I wanted to do everything myself, because I was thinking they are not going to do it as good as I am. And that's just ego. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I wasn't growing because I wasn't delegating.
Sure. It's ego. I found that, if anybody on our team watches this, they'll laugh, because we're going through that now. You can't grow and have one person be too involved in everything, right? So it's just a natural part of growth, and so you have to untangle individuals from doing those things. And I did a lot. I did a lot of things myself, and there was a point at around 2017, 2018, where I was becoming more of a problem than I was helping, because I just couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up doing it the way I did, and so we had to invest in expanding to other fractional leaders, giving them the ability to do their jobs and expand and take on some operational talent to help do the back office and just do the work of running the company, because it's just not possible to keep doing that. You hold everyone else back when you do that. But I agree with you. I think there's another element that there is control, and there's certainly that. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs love what they do. They love that minutia. They love getting in and solving the problem. That programmer loves to program, and that same programmer that starts a company loves to automate the things that run the company, right? So it's some of it is just what you like to do, which makes it worse because it's hard to give up when you
Yeah.
you're the only one that knows how to do it, which is fun, but it eventually you outgrow it. But
I remember that we have a tremendous growth from 2009 to 2011, and while I already had 111 people, 110 people, I was still writing some code.
yeah,
And then one of my mentors told me, if you don't stop writing code, I will never teach you anything anymore because you cannot do this anymore. But it was my passion. Then he told me, do it on the weekend and do it for fun, but not for your business.
no production code coming from you, right?
Yeah. And the other side of that is once I graduated as a real entrepreneur, I started to realize that I could achieve more through others. And once the Lord, put me down and removed a lot of the ego that was blocking me, once I became humble enough, I started hiring people better than me. And when that happened, like every single person that is in my company has to be better than me at their job. When I started doing that, I realized that I could actually eventually replace myself.
Yeah.
So I went and started figuring out how to create a self-managing company. And it took me 3 years, but now the company got the biggest company got self-managed, and something weird happened when I left. The company started to grow exponentially. So I was the roadblock. and I'm like, okay, so if I can do this, I can co-create with other people. And now I have 7 businesses running at the same time. And what I do is interview amazing people like you through podcasting and giving my time back to the world. Isn't that amazing?
It really is, and I'm glad you realized that, so that your businesses can grow and other people can take advantage of. Can benefit from that, right? They get a chance to lead and to grow as well. That's great.
You still have to have an eye on it. Passive income is not really passive. You still have to do something or it goes away. So I'm very aware of that. I was blessed because my grandfather was a chartered accountant, and when I told him that I wanted to become a software engineer, he said, you live in the real world, so you need to take as many accounting courses as you can, because eventually you're going to write commercial software. Little did I know that I was going to become an entrepreneur. So I did about 7-8 courses in accounting when I was in college, and because of that, I really knew how the back office worked. Sure. And that saved me from bankruptcy many times. But also today, that's how I can manage, because I just need to spend 1 or 2 hours a week in each business, and I know that everything is running fine. Or if they have trouble, they can come to me and ask questions, and I can set the right direction. But I don't need to spend, like people ask me, how can you do so much with so little time? Well, it's because I don't do the work. I just guide the people, right?
That's an amazing place to be. We're not quite there yet, but we do run on EOS. Have you heard of the Entrepreneurial operating system? We're big EOS fans, and that has made a huge difference for us. It just gives us a framework for that to happen, right? The goal would be that the visionary begins to pull out of the business in terms of the operational side of the business, so that they can truly be the visionary. I don't know if you run EOS in your companies, but it's the same concept, is that allow you to do that. And we've made some good strides towards that.
Actually, Burke, that's what the Lord used to set me free from that. I went to a very, very high-end business coach, and the first thing he said is you need to implement EOS. I didn't have the time to do it in 2019, 2018. I thought I didn't have the time to do it. But then 2020 came with COVID, and then for 3 months we had no clients, so I used that time to start implementing.
That's great.
We finished implementing in 2021, and that was the single factor on which I actually created self-managing businesses. It was through EOS. We still run it, right?
Well, and I can tell you the people that run EOS are great people as well. They're just top to bottom, such a great organization. I know their investors, also great people. It's a really well run, and it's a very compassionate and sort of loving organization, right? And they somehow, in this world where there's always not a lot of that, they've been able to do that. And it just makes a huge difference, right? I'm really impressed with what EOS has accomplished and what they're able to do.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Burke, now we've been talking for almost 40 minutes already, and I do really appreciate your time. I don't want to abuse it.
Oh, I know. It's hard. I hate for it to end.
Burke, couple of questions. First, what's in the future for you? What do you want to do with yourself like 5 years from now?
That's a good question. I mean, I still want to work. We've got a lot of ideas. We got a lot of growth to go. Fortium itself, Fortium Partners, the firm that we have now we just moved to Canada, so we just expanded to Canada in Toronto. So very tiny, about 3 partners and 1 managing partner. So we're beginning to test the waters in terms of international expansion. We'd love to go into Canada and then possibly to the UK, maybe then South America. And Central America down in South, and then we'll see where we go from there. So we want the concept of how companies acquire leadership, in our case specifically technology leadership, but we want the way that we want to create a model that makes acquiring technology leadership as a service, which is what we do, just as common as calling a search firm or calling a staffing firm or something like that, right? In our world, we think that having a ready, stable, vetted, world-class, experienced leaders with tremendous experience available on a moment's notice solves a lot of problems for entrepreneurs and business leaders, right? It really is available. And we have great relationships with companies that do chief marketing officers and chief financial officers and chief sales officers and more. We use all of those fractional leaders in our own firm as well, so that we sort of eat our own advice in that way. But so the company is going to continue to grow. We have a goal to get to 200 partners this year. I think we'll get there. I think this model can survive worldwide, up to 1,000 partners worldwide, serving clients in the roles, the technology roles that we do. When we do that, that will mean that our partners are managing a lot of technology spend, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do with that. Meaning, we can begin to move in mass as opposed to a bunch of siloed individuals, and we can make better decisions for our clients because we have a lot of experience and a lot of viewpoints to make decisions about technology investments and so forth. So it's not just putting a leader in a seat, it's learning how to create a model that puts a leader in a seat that's still connected to an organization that has a tremendous amount of understanding of the role, how to deliver that role, and keen insight into how to spend the dollars that are given to the CIO to help the company and so forth. So we think that not only growing the number of people doing the role, but also improving the way that they do the role through tools and software and data. There's a lot going on. AI is going to help us with matching companies with leaders and then helping make sure that they're doing the things that are helping those companies grow. I think ultimately it's going to be a much more sophisticated way of getting leadership than the traditional way, which is go meet a bunch of people, see if you like them, hire them, see if they work out, figure it out a year later, make a switch, do it again, right? We think we can be much more sophisticated and in the way that we do that, and it's been successful so far. So more of the same.
I get so much joy from what I do now. Like I just get to interview brilliant people like you that are really, truly changing the world for a better place with their work, sharing love. I truly believe that we just come to this world to learn how to love like Jesus did, right? Absolutely. Like Jesus does, and it's unconditional. And if every minute of our waking day, you're working to better other companies, allowing them to have this incredible experience, people, for something that they can afford,
Right.
Everybody's winning, and then you're pushing love forward. And I am excited and happy to have had you in this podcast, Burke. Thank you so much for being here.
What I like about you, David, is to bring that faith back around, and it's a pleasure to get to talk to you about it.
Last question then. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, that's good. So I would probably, I mean, there's an internal conflict when I write about my faith and when I write a message that people need to hear that Jesus is the answer. That's one. If I had two billboards, that's probably the most important answer. If I had two billboards, I would communicate about our business just because I'm passionate about it and so forth. And we are the number one provider of technology leadership in the world. I don't think there's anyone else doing that. So I would probably say, reach out to Fortium because we're the number one provider of technology leadership anywhere. And that hopefully that would start a lot of conversations to allow us to help some more people and put a lot of our partners to work doing some of the best work of their careers.
That's beautiful. And yes, you do get to have two billboards.
I really want to. That's
Burke, if people would like to hire your services and find more about you guys, where can they find you?
Yeah, www.fortiumpartners.com. It's up there in our logo. That's the best place to go. But you can find us there. That's probably the easiest place to do. We're on social media and other places, but find us there. There's a contact page to give us some information, and we'd love to talk.
Fantastic, Burke. Thank you so much. God bless you. Have a beautiful rest of the week.
Absolutely. Thanks. You too, David. All right.
Blessings. Cheers.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.